The Grade 1 Jockey Club Gold Cup happened to be the 100th running of the Jockey Club Gold Cup. Let's take a look at the field. You had 8 signed on in here. Your favorite at 3 to 5 was Diversify. We know what Diversify is capable of on his best day. He won the Whitney earlier this year at Saratoga. He is a multiple Grade 1 winner. He won this race last year in 2017. I still was just, I'm not totally convinced that 1.25 miles is his trip. I think he is better at those more middle distances, but you know what his game is. It's speed. He's going to go out there, try to bottom out fields and say, come and catch me. Well, that's all well and good, except when there's another horse that is remotely close to you, as far as being able to throw down those sorts of fractions, that could certainly compromise you. And if you happen to be a horse that might be better suited slightly shorter distances than 10 furlongs, that could be your undoing. We had an absolute barbecue on the front end, and it's set up for a bit of a shocker. Here's Larry Colmus with the stretch run of this year's Jockey Club Gold Cup.
And put to the whip. The main threats are coming. Mendelssohn and Thundersnow and Discreet Image is trying too. On the far outside, they're into the final furlong. Thundersnow has taken the lead. Discreet Image is coming. Mendelssohn is on the inside. Diversify is given way. Here comes the finish. It is going to be a photo finish, and I think it was Discreet Lover.
Discreet Lover, the second longest shot on the board. He shouldn't have ever been 45 to 1. But he probably should have been at least 30 to 1. He gets the job done. 45 to 1, pays $93, winning this year's Jockey Club Gold Cup over Thundersnow. Both of the Europeans, they run second and third. Thundersnow comes over here at odds of 6 to 1 and runs second, beaten by a neck. Mendelssohn rounds out your trifecta as the second choice at odds of 4 to 1. Let's talk about Discreet Lover first. He is 7 of 44 lifetime. You see, 14 other times he has run in the money, over $1.3 million in career earnings, owned and trained by Uriah St. Louis, bred by Woodford Thoroughbreds in Florida, ridden to victory by Manny Franco, and you see the pedigree at the bottom of the horse card. He is by Repent, have a discreet cat mare named Discreet Chat. This is an interesting situation from a speed figure standpoint. From a buyer perspective, 103 for Discreet Lover, 123 time form U.S. rating. That is including the pace aided or pace factored in to that number from time form U.S. Thundersnow, a 103 buyer and a 123 time form U.S. rating. Mendelssohn, a 101 buyer, but again, when you factor in the pace situation and how close he was to it, he actually earned the same figure that the top two did, 123. Carlino runs fourth, 97 buyer, 116 time form U.S. rating. Diversify, the pace setter, 96 buyer, 121 time form U.S. rating, again, simply because he was going as fast as he was. Time form U.S. had the half, 3/4, and mile calls, all color-coded red, meaning the fractions were fast. I'm going to go out on a limb and tell you that the opening quarter would probably also be considered fast, and I would say that's color-coded red as well. This is an instance where pace makes the race. We talk about it all the time. When you have just a crazy pace up front, it could eventually or occasionally collapse and help set things up for horses coming from well off the pace. That's exactly what you had here on Saturday afternoon at Belmont Park. Discreet Lover was taken to basically the rear of the pack for the most part, started to make up a little bit of ground, but when you see the fractions of 22 and 3, 45 and 3, 109 flat, think about that. They're going 10 furlongs, 109 for 3/4. That's a legit sprint fraction. Going 10 furlongs, boy, it's going to be tough to hang on and keep going on. The mile, they stopped that in 33 and 4. Final time, 1:59.99. Discreet Lover took advantage of that. The pace melted down. He came. Manny Franco patiently got the horse to relax, and they came with their run. Discreet Lover is the kind of horse that he always will show up, more often than not, with a legitimate bid. Uriah St. Louis had said that the sort of reasoning for such a poor performance in the Woodward most recently was they were probably too close to the pace. He's best when you take him back, get him to relax, make that one run. I don't think anyone's sitting here saying Discreet Lover all of a sudden should be looked at as one of the key contenders for the Breeders' Cup Classic. In fact, they may not even go to the Breeders' Cup Classic. Uriah St. Louis is doing right by the horse. He's saying, I would go if he is good. He comes before any Breeders' Cup. Basically just saying, if he checks out and everything's good at coming out of this race, they'll go on. And if for some reason there's a little bit of a hiccup and he needs some time, they won't go to the Breeders' Cup. But if he comes out sound and everything is beautiful, they'll go on to it. If they go to the Classic, he is certainly not one of the top 3, 4, 5 contenders in that race. But he is that kind of horse. To me, I'd be looking at him saying he's probably going to be pretty darn close to the price that he is in this race, 30, 40 to 1. You know that the 10 furlongs is an issue for him. If he gets a little bit of pace, he's going to come with a bid. And even if he doesn't get giant pace, he's probably going to come with an honest effort at the end. Is he this good? Is he truly one of the best horses in the world? No, absolutely not. Nobody's going to say that. But It's an awesome story, and this is the kind of horse, from a gambling standpoint, he can certainly run third or fourth in a race like the Classic at a giant price. And really, that's what you're looking for in races like that. You need to identify who's going to win, no question about it. But if I can find a horse like this that I know is going to infuse some value at a giant price, and he's probably going to appreciate the 10 furlongs more than some of the other horses, why not? Discreet Lover, I've always been a big fan of this horse. I never thought that he would do something like this. I always had said when he is appropriately placed, he runs to his best. Well, guess what? Everything worked out here. This was a great effort. And again, tip of the cap to Uriah St. Louis. It's an awesome story. Manny Franco gets the job done. Let's talk about Thunder Snow and Mendelssohn, because I kind of feel like they need to go hand in hand because they're the two Europeans. Thunder Snow, his most recent start over at York, I thought was disappointing the way that he just packed it in as badly as he did after being up in the front end. This race here, though, it at least showed that he can come with a bid. Now, again, you got to look at it and be honest when you're going over this race. He had a beautiful setup, too, because he was about 7 lengths behind the top 2 horses that were setting the pace. And eventually, when they started to tire, he comes with his bid. Now, he did make the first move, so you need to give him some bonus points for that. But he had a pretty good run of this race. On the flip side, you have Mendelssohn, who was up there pushing those fractions throughout. And the fact that he was only beaten by just under 2 lengths, I think that speaks volumes about where this horse has come in a relatively short amount of time. He's always had ability. The Derby was just, you know what, draw a line through it. It is what it is. The Dwyer, 1-turn mile, I didn't think it was a good effort at all. But even having said that, it's probably not what he wants. He is a distance horse. 2 turns is really what it seems like he wants. He shows up in the Travers, runs a bang-up race that day, loses to Catholic Boy. They bring him back here. He runs a bang-up race here, running third. I look at those top 2, and we can even say the top 3. Listen to these fractions incrementally. You can go into Formulator and break it down like this. This tells the tale of the tape. You look at a horse like Discreet Lover. His first quarter, 25-27. Thunder Snow's first quarter, 24-17. Mendelssohn's first quarter, 22-98. We're talking almost 2.5 seconds faster from Mendelssohn in that first quarter as opposed to a horse like Discreet Lover. Okay. Second quarter, they're all pretty even. 23-01, 23-09, 23-01. And this is going in order, first, second, third. The third quarter, 23-41, 23-92, 23-49. Now keep in mind, that's Discreet Lover coming from the back, starting to warm up a little bit. He basically ran essentially the same sort of fraction that Mendelssohn did, but Mendelssohn is up there on the front end pushing those fractions still. The fourth quarter, 23-32, 23-40, 24-59. Now you're starting to see Mendelssohn's feeling it a little bit. He's going considerably slower, 5 to 6 lengths slower than some of those other horses, those 2 that we're talking about in front of him. But that's basically also a piece where you need to factor in that you've got a horse like Thunder Snow starting to make that first move, and Discreet Lover is taking advantage of that pace melting down in front of him. In the final quarter for all 3 of them, 25 flat, 25-46, 26-27. 26-27, that is a product of that pace up in front being just ballistic and being, supersonic. The Discreet Lover pace is a factor of him still having something a little bit left in the tank coming from the back. And you know what? You can split those 2 numbers with Thunder Snow's effort because he was basically splitting those 2 horses throughout the run. This was the definition of pace makes the race. Now, of these 3 exiting this race, who am I most interested in for the Classic? For the longest time, and I say the longest time, the race only happened 2 days ago, but I looked at it and said, I think Mendelssohn ran an exceptional race in here. And if you think that the pace is going to be a bit more moderate in a race like the Breeders' Cup Classic, all of a sudden he becomes very, very interesting. I also really like the effort from Thunder Snow, though, if I'm being honest. He's very late with the lead change, but again, this is his first start on dirt since the Dubai World Cup. I think there's a real scenario where this is his second start off the bench. The Classic will be his third start off the bench. I think there's a real scenario where he takes a step forward as well. And if you think that he can be a little bit closer to a more moderate pace, let's say instead of going 45 and 3 to the half, the Classic they go 47 or 46 and 4. Let's say it is 6-7 lengths slower. I can't imagine being that far back. And if you think that he has the bottom and he's going to be able to finish, which he should, there's no reason to think that he won't. Thunder Snow all of a sudden becomes very, very interesting. And you can't definitively say one way or the other if either one of these horses can handle Churchill Downs because each time they both tried it, in the Kentucky Derby, it was a disaster for both of them. So you're not supposed to use that as sort of a barometer of whether they can or can't handle the racing surface. The one thing I would say about Mendelssohn, if you happen to get wet weather down in Louisville for the Breeders' Cup, you have to factor that in because that was far and away his worst effort. Now, I understand, and I've been the champion of saying this. Coming out of the gate, Mendelssohn lost all chance when he got blindsided. But having said that, it didn't look like he was appreciating running over that sort of wet racing surface as well. Thunder Snow, we'll wait and see. I believe he has run over tracks with some moisture in it in the past. Perhaps he can handle it. One other thing to factor in with these two horses, and I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a major piece for me to consider going forward and thinking about the Classic. Thunder Snow should be chipping to Churchill Downs during the middle of this week. Probably Wednesday, Thursday, I would imagine. That's at least what's been reported. Mendelssohn is going back to Ireland, and then they will ship in the week of the Breeders' Cup. At what point, and Aidan O'Brien is as good as anyone at shipping horses internationally, but at what point does all the travel for Mendelssohn start to add up? He came over here for the Dwyer, he went back home. He came over here for the Travers, he went back home. He came over here for the Jockey Club, went back home. And now he's going to come back over here. This is going to be, and that's also factoring in, by the way, he came here for the Kentucky Derby. So May, June, or July, one of the two, wherever that Dwyer was run, might have been July, August, and September, and now you're going to do it again in November, 5 weeks later. I wonder at what point does that start to take a toll going back and forth internationally. Meanwhile, Thunder Snow is going to go and get acclimated. I would give a slight edge to Thunder Snow for that, for at least getting used to his surroundings. I've always maintained, and look, I'm not a trainer. The trainers know a hell of a lot more about their horses or horses in general than I do. I've just never understood the idea of let's just get in there at the very last minute and go. I'd rather have a horse, especially if you know what the race is, get him in there real early, get him acclimated, get him used to it. Have it be a long, extended stay. Have him be there for 3 weeks if you can. And it sounds like that's what they're going to do with Thunder Snow. He's going to go and get used to everything. As far as the rest of the field is concerned, diversify. I don't want to hold this race against him. He's better than this. There's no question about it. The pace just it blew up. I mean, there's no other way to put it. They had to go really early fast. And you know what Diversify's game is. He's a speed horse. I don't think he is a Breeders' Cup Classic horse. I don't think 10 furlongs is what he wants. Churchill Downs, the only time he's run down there was a disaster. That was in the Clark last year. To me, he's the kind of horse where he's best going shorter, and you can just let him roll. If I were involved with the horse, I would be bypassing the Breeders' Cup, and I would be waiting for the Cigar Mile at Aqueduct. You know he can handle Aqueduct. Give him a little bit of a breather. This was a very, very difficult race. And you can even say the same thing about Mendelssohn. That's another piece to factor in. Did this take too much out of him? Because he ran his ass off. There's no question about it. But with Diversify, I would pass on the Breeders' Cup, and I would go on to a race like the Cigar Mile. Gronkowski was really, really disappointing in a spot like this, simply because he had the pace. Belmont Park, that's where he's run his best race to date, and he just never came with any sort of a bid. Very, very disappointing effort there from the third choice at odds of 5-1. I'm sure Chad's going to have to go through and go over him with a fine-tooth comb, and who knows, maybe there's something else going on, but he's been very disappointing in each of his past 2 starts, the Travers as well as this race. But really, this race, to me, boils down to 4 horses: Diversify and Mendelssohn, the pace setters; Thunder Snow, the one who took up one of the better positions; and then Discreet Lover, who took advantage of the ultimate pace meltdown. The top 3 horses, they all ran very, very well, especially the 2 Europeans. But the one that gets all the cash and prizes, Discreet Lover, one of the cooler stories in 2018. It's going to be difficult to top this one. Suppose you could top it if he goes down and wins the Breeders' Cup Classic. Uriah St. Louis. He and Discreet Lover, Manny Franco aboard. They get the job done in the Jockey Club Gold Cup at odds of 45-1. 103 Buyer's speed figure, 123 time form U.S. rating. If all is well, they're going on to the Breeders' Cup.